Well, fans are still fuming that Netflix lost Henry Cavill. Now they've released one of the worst mainstream fantasy shows ever made in the form of The Witcher Blood Origin, the spin-off set 1200 years before the time of Geralt and Ciri. And without Henry Cavill, the future for this show and the entire franchise looks bleak. He's coming back for his third and final season next summer, but who really cares at this point? He was the one that was carrying the show. He was the one that cared about the books and the games, about the source material, and the fans. But I'll tell you what guys, the promotion for season 3 is gonna be interesting. Will Henry Cavill even be involved? Will he be forced to do it, which is gonna be so awkward? Because remember, according to the showrunner, season 3 is going to be much closer to the books. Please watch our show before Henry Cavill leaves and it gets cancelled, or it gets rushed towards the end with a season 4, maybe 5 that are filmed back to back. But we'll worry about that next year. Let's talk about Blood Origin, the second spin-off. As I said, set 1200 years before the time of Geralt, and it promised to dive deep into the largely mysterious history of the Witcher continent, including the golden age of the elves, the first Witcher, and the legendary event, the conjunction of the spheres, which brought humans, monsters, and many other beings into the planet dominated by the elves. And that sounds pretty interesting because I'm a sucker for history and lore. Blood Origin could have been decent. We could have learned all about the conjunction, the wild hunt, the elder blood, the list goes on and on. Well, unfortunately Netflix had other ideas, and it's safe to say this show is the Witcher they've always wanted to make. One not restricted by lore and canon, one they can tick all their boxes with. One that doesn't have a big muscly dumb gamer boy at the helm, whose only purpose really was to bring in fans of the books and the games, and take his shirt off every now and then. But without him, nobody really cares about The Witcher, and the future of this entire franchise is in doubt. And it's such a shame because I was a fan. I'll admit season 1 has its issues, mostly around its multiple timelines, but it had potential. It even entered pop culture with all the Geralt memes, the Jaskier stuff, and toss a coin to your Witcher. And initially I thought season 2 was decent. I said it was a better production, but it has its problems as well. But going back and learning more about what happened behind the scenes, I've changed my mind. Netflix have completely thrown the books out. They just want to make their own version of The Witcher, and it's obvious what vision that is. And it didn't shock me when we learned that Henry Cavill had problems behind the scenes, and a former Witcher writer said the other writers mocked the source material and its fans. And it's just one big mess now. And as much as I loved Henry Cavill's version of Geralt and elements of the show, it's living on borrowed time now. But I guess we should talk more about the actual story of Blood Origin, even though I don't really want to. I watched it once, half paying attention, and I never will again. It's really just 7 warriors from different elven clans coming together to stop the newly formed empire, who are pretty much just 7 nobodies who feel more like archetypes than actual characters. And to me, the elves don't feel any different than humans, which is an all too common writing issue today. Take a look at Rings of Power. I kind of feel a lot of TV shows are scared to copy and paste Tolkien elves, and they want their elves to feel more human-like, more relatable, so they just turn them into humans. And remember, before this empire, there were 3 elven kingdoms at war for 1,000 years. They could have made unique, intriguing cultures, but no, just people with pointy ears. I get it, it's a rushed miniseries, but it's like they're not even trying. The books and the games done well to establish the 2 groups of elves. The Enshi of the Witcher continent who feel like wood elves, and then the NL who feel more like high elves. But here, they're all the same. Most of the characters are forgettable, including the 2 leads. She is basically just strong female warrior with a dark past, and he's just big strong dude who got banished for fucking the princess. And his proto-Witcher form, the CGI was horrible, and the first thing I thought about was the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen Mr. Hyde from 2003. But yes, if I recall correctly, these 2 are Ciri's ancestors, because they fuck after he becomes a Witcher and she is impregnated. So they've completely messed about with the origin of the Elder Blood. Does that mean their child is now going to be Lara Dorren, or someone that leads to her? But what about Lara Dorren's father, the Elven King, who shows up later in the Witcher story? It's almost like the writers just read Last Wish and Sword of Destiny and then picked the show up, tried to make a name for themselves. And you've got the princess turned Empress Meryn, who is just a trope of not wanting to be married off because she's a woman. And Michelle Yeoh is there because she's Michelle Yeoh. Lenny Henry's just on the Infinity Quest to collect all the TV fantasy shows now. What's he been in? Lord of the Rings, he was in Sandman, this, I'm sure he's been in more as well. He's not even that great of an actor, but he keeps turning up. I know Graham McTavish is on the same quest, he's been in The Hobbit, he was in House of the Dragon, he was in The Witcher, but at least he can do the job. The only other character that really I remember is the dwarven lady who is always swearing. Basically, they've just watched the main show and remembered that Geralt says fuck all the time. They're just archetypes, poorly written characters, kind of feel bad for the actors, but you're just doing a job. Of course, there are established Witcher characters like Eredin and Avalak in there. They even end with a teaser for Avalak. He was the actual guy that Ciri saw in Season 1, not Geralt. And it turns out Ciri's bloodline comes from the very first Witcher. Blah blah blah. This all goes against the lore. They just make up a bunch of new characters, events and history no one cares for. And a forced Jaskier cameo isn't going to save this show. And even he has become annoying. In the books and the games, he was a womanizer. I get why that was toned down a bit. But on this show, he's just bait. And it feels so lazy. The world is so generic. And guys, if you think of a fantasy trope, particularly from today's media, it's there. And the writing was just so bad. Especially that scene when you have the coup. I honestly feel the writers thought they had another Red Wedding going on there. But it was just so predictable, so lazy, so amateurish. I know this show originally had 6 episodes, and at times it feels like a copy and pasted attempt to restructure into 4. But even if it had another 2 episodes, it wouldn't make a difference. In fact, it would just make it longer, and more of a chore to get through. This is a poorly written show in terms of a mainstream fantasy. Plot holes galore, cringe dialogue, actors who don't know what they're doing or don't want to be there, laughable fight scenes, logic was thrown out the window many times, and as an adaptation of The Witcher, pure nonsense. Doesn't resemble the world of the books, the games, and at times even the main Witcher show. It's just the Witcher brand with a few names, places and events mixed in with whatever the writers want. Either because they think they know better than the author, Andrzej Sapkowski, who wrote a classic, inspired by Slavic mythology and folklore, and made into one of the best games of all time in The Witcher 3. And of course, we can't deny, there is an agenda here, and that is to make The Witcher for the modern world. And they have achieved that, at the cost of one of the best fantasy IPs out there, an established fan base, and a hell of a lot of money. The Rotten Tomatoes score says it all. At one point, it was as low as 8% on the audience score. I think it's up to 12 now. They'll probably spin it and say it's fans angry that Henry's leaving, or racist fans, or whatever they usually say. We were told time and time again that it's going to be faithful to the books, inspired by the games, but also be a fun TV show. And it never comes to be. Season 3 promises to be more canonical, but it's not going to happen. It's supposedly going to give Henry the heroic send-off he deserves, but that's not true. I said I was done when Henry Cavill quit. Now I'm certain. I'm going to watch Season 3 because I'm curious, but The Witcher's on its deathbed now, and it's such a shame. Love the books, which you have to read or listen to the audiobooks, and of course The Witcher 3 is one of the best games of all time. And it's just came out on the PS5 and the new Xbox, so if you haven't played it yet, you've got those consoles, pick it up. But guys, make sure you post your thoughts on The Witcher Blood Origin and the current state of the main show. I think most of us agree the spin-off sucks, but what does the future hold for you? You going to stick around for Henry Cavill in Season 3? You going to jump ship now? Let me know. On the brighter side, we have His Dark Materials next, which is a show that actually loves and respects the source material, so subscribe to get that. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you soon.